Right, so this is what I'm going to talk about today. Basically, I like Twitter. It's been a great networking tool for myself. So just through, I don't know, like I think I joined about 3 years back. So I'm going to just kind of go over some of the lessons learned and how you can use it to meet new folks and help boost your security career. So this is me on Twitter. This is where I live. I run this website. I inject security into this, so I'm not like a very hands-on type of person. Of course, I create lots of this, which makes me want to do that. So in the survey, I guess who's not on Twitter? I saw a few people, but all right.
You will be after this show.
Yeah. Okay, and then for some of the folks out there that raise their hand, how do you use Twitter, or how has Twitter been beneficial to you? Anybody? Raise hand.
Threat intelligence.
Threat intelligence.
Good security news.
Good security news. Anybody?
It also helps identifying contacts if you have an issue with a certain organization.
Okay. Contacts for bad organizations that don't listen to you when you try to when you want to release stuff and they won't get back to you. So as I already said, I tried to pass out some cards there. So what I want to do is, you can write something funny there too, but periodically when I see you guys start to sleep, I'm going to be like, all right, let's see how so-and-so uses Twitter. So make it funny. This is what I'm going to go over. My typical agenda slide. One thing that I'll say is if you want to like troll me on Twitter, like I have a client up, and so I can, it'll make the presentation like a little bit more interactive, a little bit more fun. And if the client's set up right, you'll actually see the growl alerts that'll pop up there. Why? Okay. That didn't work right. Automation fail. So why do you want to do it? Personally, I mean, what I found over the past few years is that most of the security community lives on Twitter. A lot of people use it for personal branding, marketing. I think one of the key things, though, and some of the people already mentioned this, is that it helps you extend your network. And what I actually found is I do this on sort of like my own thing, but what I actually find is that in building that network, it helps me solve problems for my day job too. So I will go in and, instead of pounding my head for 5 hours trying to figure something out, maybe after the first hour I'll be like, hey, has anyone seen this error or this bug? And then the other thing too is, you have to help others out. So it kind of brings in this whole community that where we can all help each other out. So as I said, there's I'm getting like no laughs. Come on, our picture was great. So the first one is to pick a super niche. Okay, is that Powerade? Shoot. Okay, first one, is that Powerade? That's pretty good. Conspiracy. That was beer, I guess, but.
So I guess they shouldn't have bought don'tclickshit.com.
So one of the examples that I like to give is that if you want to, Twitter is this vast sea, and how do you, in terms of branding and marketing yourself, how do you make yourself stand out? And I often go back to the blog example. Like I could start a security blog, but how am I going to compete against, CNET has a whole security section, the Register, there's InfoSec Island, how am I going to stand out amongst all those? And so what I like to say is that you need to somehow make yourself a boutique provider of a certain type of information. And the best way to do that is is to is to fill a niche that no one is in yet. And the last line here, which is sums up this whole thing, is that you have to narrow down in multiple dimensions until you create your own niche. I live in DC, so the first thing I said is, instead of me just creating like a general info site or have my kind of profile on Twitter represent something. So the first dimension is, instead of just being like an international Twitter guy, I'm going to be like, all right, I'm going to focus on general security around DC. So you go from competing with like 200,000 to maybe like 1,000. And then maybe you want to focus you can go a second dimension, and then you want to focus on forensics. So, so now you're down to maybe like 100, like there's only 100 other people that are like you. And then maybe you could even go down further, saying, Mac forensics, so that's a way to just niche down, so that, and one of the things is that this will help you instead of just being, it'll give you topics to talk about, because you're down in this niche that no one else has really gotten into yet. So obviously, you get down into your niche, you better know what you're talking about. So that's what those slides say there. Now the last point is interesting, because what I find is that when you niche down, you know your audience very well. So it's easier for you to push out content that they like.
Yeah.
So if you're just getting started on Twitter, the first thing is, you got to pick who you're going to follow. So, because a lot of your content, you're going to be interacting with those folks. So you want to find people with similar interests, or people that are growing, or trying to get into your niche field. So there's a few schools of thought in terms of how to follow folks. There's people that maybe they just go out and follow a few influential folks, and then they'll read everything. So you'll see somebody, like maybe they only follow like 100 people, but they read everything. That's what I do, but that's just because I would rather, and most of the people that I follow, since my niche is in, the DC, so I follow most people that are in DC. But you can still always at me and I'll respond. So the other way is to, and I was talking to a guy at SmooCon 2 years back, and he basically said, I follow everybody. He follows like 2,000 people. And I'm like, well, how do you read all those? And his philosophy was, well, what I do is I go, and I don't treat it as like an email box where I'm going to read everything. It's like, so his philosophy was, I want to see what's going on in the world, and so he'll use it as, hey, I'm going to just dip my toe in and get a feel for, at this point in time, this is what's going on. Now the last one is sort of a hybrid approach, where you basically follow lots of people, but then you can, using Twitter lists, you can put them in high, medium, low, and obviously, so you would make the list private, so people don't know that, what list they're in. But so you're going to read like all the highs, most of the mediums, and then the lows you just may check like if you have time. So that's another alternative. There is the Twitter lists don't work that well. It does leave out like retweets and replies and things like that, so you don't get the full. That's the only downside of that method. So then you want to get, but basically, in order to find these people, you want to reach out and find the potential folks that you want to follow. By the way, does anybody want to pass the cards in so I can? Just pass them up to the front. So in order to find folks, you can, like if you already go to, meetups and OWASPs, things like that. what you can do is, so you already know these folks, the people that you work with, and so this will allow you, so you throw this list, these folks into the list of people that you want to follow, and then you can also go and, say you pick some sort of niche, and there's a related niche, and so you can see who's influential in that niche and follow them. And one of the things that, you can go and you can look at bios, search for them on Google, check out their websites. There's some ranking services that'll, Clout, which is pro, con, people go both ways with that. So you have this huge list, and then you can pick, like, all right, well, these are the people, it's basically experimentation at that point where you can go in and get a feel for, all right, this is a person that I definitely want to follow. They put out good stuff. And one of the things you want to do is, a lot of people will generally look to you saying, all right, well, who does Grex follow? Those are, like, he probably follows some good folks, so let's see what he does. So you can influence who other people follow too. So one of the things you want to do is prune inactive accounts. And so I use Twitoria. So that basically goes in and you put your name in, and then it'll tell you who hasn't tweeted in the last day, week, month. So you can help prune there. And then also you can go and, I'm sure, like, I get lots of Twitter people trying to, lonely women that on a Friday night that want to, so you can block them and things. Help keep Twitter clean. We all need to do our part there. But basically now you have your established niche. And I mean, this is maybe later, but at a certain point, you've established yourself in this niche. And so, and you have two choices. You can either dig deeper within that niche, or you can slowly widen into adjacent areas. And that's general. Like, I mentor a lot of folks, and that's general. People that they kind of want to. Well, what do I do next? And my general advice is, pick a niche, get good at it, and then you can either go deeper or you can widen. All right. Does anybody remember this, or am I just old?
I must be old too.
All right.
You guys are old.
Who's the guy on the right?
It's Larry Bird and is it Magic?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
All I remember is Protector Johnson, it's not magic.
So what you want to do next is, now you got kind of, well, you need to know, like, what am I going to use to tweet with or whatever. So, and then also looking at good stats. And I like to use stats because it lets me know what people like, don't like, which helps me kind of get a feel for this is the content. Like, I should do more of this, less of this. So I'm in the government realm, and I did it considerations here, but I should really call it requirements or whatever. But so these are the requirements I put together. So you have multiple accounts, because you may want to have a personal account, a work account. Multiple columns, URL shortener stats, which Twitter is totally screwing with now because they're pushing everybody to go to the TKO, which has no stats from what I can see. And also the last one, like a lot of the web clients, you tweet and somebody will respond to you, and it's like 5 minutes later or something. So there's a slow. Where most of the desktop clients are just, they do the streaming API thing, and so it's instantaneously pops up. So the first set of things that I go to is web, and I just sort of did a matrix here of pros and cons of each one. Oh, let's see. Protect Your Johnson, it's not magic. Sweet. But anyway, so there's Seismic Web, which I like. It runs a little slow, depending on the platform. Yeah, but it has some good points. As Bitly, it takes sometimes 30 seconds to 2 minutes for tweets to pop up. One of the things I really like about it is it has a nice filtering capability. So if you want to do, oh, I know I tweeted that and it had these keywords, the Twitter search sucks, right? So you can use that and you can bring up your home stream and just filter stuff out on a certain keyword or hashtag. Hootsuite I used to use a long time, although they've gotten a little bit, too corporate-y. They also have this, they don't support any shortening services beyond their own. So it's like use Hootsuite or not. There's no, like you can't, like if you like Bitly because you have your own personal URL finder or URL, your personalized URL through Bitly, that's not going to work there. Slight delay, but it's pretty good. It has this annoying timeout feature so that if you, like if you're away from it for 15 minutes, it times out and then it just sort of stops. And you have to kind of go and kind of log back in and do this refresh thing. You lose your place where you were, and it's just sort of annoying. Twader, now no one, who's heard of Twader? Anyway, so that's an interesting service. It's somebody put together about 2 years back, and they did a good job, but then it just sort of died there. But one of the things that I like to mention is they do integrate with Bitly, and the one thing that they do that no one else does for free is you can schedule recurring tweets. So this is a marketer's stream. I'm going to say, hey, every Monday I'm going to tweet this message or something. Now there are paid ones out there, but I'm cheap. So, and then the last one, Twitter Feed, which isn't a client per se, but it does one thing and it does it well, which is if you have a blog, you can take your RSS feed and then feed it into your tweet stream. These are the applications that I've used over the year. There's a standard. I'm sure most people use TweetDeck, right? Who doesn't use TweetDeck? All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. But that's kind of a standard. I used that up until maybe about a month ago. But the thing that I didn't like is it's error-based, so it's a little clunky. And Twitter bought it, so a lot of the advantages, I think they're they're going to cut out, because they're going to force it to go the Twitter way, and so you won't be able to go in and use your own stats package. Seismic Desktop is good. The scroll, once again, it's even worse than being error-based. It's Silverlight based, so the scrolling's a little jumpy, but it has some good features. There is a slight delay there. For some reason, they're not using the Twitter Streams API. And then Twitter, they don't have a client for Windows, but they do have one for Mac. Very slick, pretty awesome. But once again, because Twitter owns it, you have to use the TKO service, and you really don't have any insight into what's doing that. And then the last one, which I actually started using a month back, is a Mac client, and I'm not even going to try to say it, but it's like Eurofukuro, whatever, okay? It's pretty slick. The only thing that I don't like is it doesn't have multi-columns, but I've sort of learned to live with that. Now it has the tabs that you can go.
It also, I used to use that and it always runs into API problems, like I don't
Really?
get direct messages, like it always says at the bottom, like API.
Yeah,
whatever,
it's
but
always
we-
running. Yeah, like I can
all
show
the
that.
time. And so I wasn't getting direct messages for
Really?
weeks, and so I quit using it.
Oh, really?
To TweetDeck, but I really like it better.
Yeah. It's very smooth.
Who's that?
This one at the bottom, Euro,
Euro.
whatever. I don't know, Carlos told me
Australia.
into it.
Dan, I'll just send you a message about it.
So then there's a bunch of mobile clients. Most of the You know, the Seismics and TweetDecks, they have their mobile version too, whether you're an iPhone or Android. The one that I want to point out that's a little bit different is the third one, which is Twiddlator. That's this guy that it's probably the most powerful iPhone Twitter client that I've found. You can do a lot of cool things with it, so I'd recommend checking that out. Here's my personal preference matrix. You know, for when I'm on my Mac, I usually use the Euro one. As a backup, I like to use this Seismic Web. On the mobile platform, I'll mainly use Twiddlator, and as an alternate, I'll use either TweetDeck or I'm actually trying out like Echo something or other, Echo Font. Let's see, analysis, I like to use Seismic Web because of the filtering that I mentioned. Recurring, I use Twitter, so associated with my blog, I'll put out recurring tweets. Like, you know, there's the whole security twits thing, so I did like the Nova security twits, and so I'll like, hey, don't forget to join us, although no one ever joins, but it's supposed to be like a localized version of security twits. And then the last one is Twitter feed. Oh, and then for the R, so I have a blog and I use Twitter feed to push my RSS feed into my Twitter stream. And then Twitter does that too. So the next one is, so strategy 3. I need Dave to do the like episode 5 or whatever.
We say episode 5?
Or no,
Episode 5.
it's actually strategy 3.
Oh. You only get one out of me, so. You burned it.
Packaging more, man. So a lot of people are just like, you know, I mean, I'm not talking about, hey, like going to the bathroom, reading some random book, but, you know, if you want to use Twitter as a networking tool, you know, one of the rules is that you really want to post relevant content out associated with the niche that you chose. Just some thoughts with some very small text there. There's this thing that I heard called, I don't do this, well I kind of do it, but it's called Twitter channels. So there's basically no cost of having people follow an extra account. So what you can do is you can have your Twitter kind of family one, your Twitter friends one, and then, hey, this is my Twitter work or security pro one. And so depending on, people can just choose to follow, oh, I want to, you know, I work with Grex, but I also party with him, you know, so I'll follow the last two. So it lets people choose the information that they want to get. And that's just this interesting term that they came up, Twitter channels. And the other bullets describe that. So I guess, what do you want to tweet? And the 3 things that I often say is you can either transfer content, you can seed new content, or you can converse with people. I like doing the last one the most, once you get into some fun arguments. But in terms of transfer, so you found this group of people that you want to follow, so you can retweet the content that they put out that you think's good. But one of the things that I like to do is, I don't like to do the standard or the Twitter retweet. I like to do like, you know, the quote one. So, because I like to go in and tell the people that follow me, like, hey, well, this is this interesting story that somebody else that I got from this person. This is why I think this is cool. So the key point is adding your opinion on, which is hard because you only have 140 characters. Sometimes people get pissed because I'll cut stuff off and they'll be like, hey, you took out this key phrase, and I'm like, so I usually retweet it out with the full, but I do like to add my opinion to it. Some of the strategies, you know, you can either, you know, just, you know, word for word, just doing a standard quote retweet. Or if it's very long, you know, you can maybe summarize it down. If you're interested in getting retweets, instead of saying what what the link goes to, you can tease it some. Get more retweets or fabs that way. So the next one is seed. So, you can take your RSS and you can feed it into Twitter. There's about 5-6 security RSS feeds that I follow, and I usually don't retweet like name link, like I'll add in like, hey, this is why this is really cool, or I'll put their conclusion in. And then also, if you miss stuff, there's several memes. Like I don't know if it's still up, but there's tweet memes, so you can go back at the end of the day or the end of the week and see if there's any stories that you've missed. Then the last one is conversing, and this is the big thing, and this is the most fun part that on Twitter. So, just doing ad hoc basis, somebody tweets something out, so you'll reply and ask a question. One of the cool things that I started doing the past 3 weeks is getting into tweet chats. Are people familiar with that? So that is like, all right, at a day at a certain time, usually there's a moderator, and you can go and they'll ask like questions, and you can argue amongst all the people that take part of the tweet chats. And it's pretty cool to look, like their standard thing is like the theme, and then they'll add chat, and they just use a hashtag. So the one that I do, I don't have it in this presentation, but it's like secure chat. And it's pretty cool. It's like Thursday at 2. It's run by a company, so it's kind of nice just to meet new folks. And then last one was reply to others that you retweet. So if you retweet somebody and you really couldn't give them creds, I'll be like, just let folks know that, hey, you did a good job. I really like that link. So the next thing is when you want to do it. And one of the philosophies, it's very hard, but one of the things I like to do is try to tweet when no one else is tweeting, which is usually on the weekend. Not too much activity there. But in terms of during the weekday, like I've tried to, this isn't scientific, but it's sort of 4 or 5 times that I've found that are kind of like strategic where you can reach the most folks. So 7, right when you get up, people will read it when they first get into work. 11, so that whenever they get back from lunch, they'll probably read your tweets. Because most people that use Twitter is they'll just bring it up and maybe scroll back some, and then they'll read up. So they don't usually read all the different tweets. And also there's a study, I've read 2 studies that said for some random reason, and it's time zone independent, but the best time to get a retweet is 4:01. So if you put a tweet out at 4:01, statistically that's you'll get the most retweets. Again, all right. And then 8. So most of us are a little older with kids, and so you put the kids down, and then people. The first thing I do as soon as I put the kids down is I run back, and I want to do cool stuff. So. So put the kids down, and then the rest of the night, most of the dads that are in our field are probably doing a lot of their work then. And then later, I'll be up 12, 1, 2 o'clock during the weekday, and I'll tweet, and I'll be just shocked. I'm like, wow, people are up. I already talked about some of the weekend stuff. These are just some ideas that you can do. Like you can use a service like TweetMeme and put like a 7-day filter on it and say, hey, these are the most popular tweets throughout the week. One of the things that I've been doing recently is putting out a blog post, kind of a summary of the big news that week. And since I use Bitly, I can go back into the Bitly stats, and I can see over the past 7 days what the most popular articles were. So I'll kind of, and I'll usually get 20, and then I'll depending on the audience that I'm trying to focus on, I'll cut out, I'll bring it down to maybe like the top 10. And then because you don't want to sit in front of your computer all day Saturday and Sunday, you can use some of the different web clients to schedule things out. So, Sunday, take the day off. Of course, I'm getting ready for Monday usually. I'm not going to go through all this, but I came across a few blog posts that talked about, what the official or unofficial, the Twitter style guide. And so these are some of the things that they put out. Down in the bottom there's that teaser content that I mentioned, and think of it as a movie trailer. And the next one, the next basic rule is know what you're sharing. So don't just blindly tweet stuff out, that just to tweet. So know it, hey, I read this is a good article, I'm going to tweet about it. Maybe then you can add your summary or your opinion at the end in a very short amount of words. Last one is avoid multiple retweets. And this is an interesting thing that, whenever, you want to give people credit, but, like so-and-so, person A tweets and then person B does a retweet, like you basically, there's no room left. It's all retweets. So one of the style guides is, hey, it's all right. You only have to keep the last person that you retweeted. And theoretically, a person could go back and research where that came from. But so you're kind of missing, a few people miss out. What I like to do there, just to let folks know that, hey, there's more, this person got it from this person, got it from this person, is I'll just put like a dot there, just to let people know, like, hey, Tau Security tweeted this, but there's a lot more where he got it too. So just some general do's and don'ts. In order to get the most like if you want people to retweet your stuff, you want to keep your tweets under 115 characters, and so that's so that if people retweet it, they don't have to shorten it. It's very easy for them to push something out. If you have similar Facebook and LinkedIn accounts, it makes sense to, there's apps where you can push your Twitter stuff over to Facebook and LinkedIn. People sometimes comment on the Facebook stuff, but I never log on to Facebook, so I miss out on the conversation that goes on there. Some don'ts. Don't follow Friday. Don't do follow Friday recommendation list. What I propose as an alternative is to, instead of putting out a list of like 50 people, hey, follow Friday, maybe each week put out 1 or 2 or 3 follow Friday tweets, but say like, hey, I'm gonna follow Friday Iron Geek, which like, what is it? It's like
Iron Geek _ADC.
Okay, Iron Geek _ADC. I'm gonna recommend him, and then I'm gonna say, hey, follow this guy because he has elite vid skills, So give people a reason, don't just spit out this whole long list, give people, hey, this is why I think you should follow this person. So, you can just put those out into 2-3 different tweets. Don't over tweet. There's a followcost.com, so you can go to your Twitter account and put your Twitter name in, and it'll tell you what your average tweet per day is. Because if you're too chatty, then people won't want to follow you. And the other thing that this helps you do too is it helps you limit. Like, oh, do I really want to tweet this story because I only got, I don't want to tweet more than 20. It allows you to be more selective in the content that you tweet out. Automation. Okay, so I kind of talked on this some. I don't recommend doing a lot of this, but it can help in certain situations. And there's some good, like if you want to hack Twitter, there's some good ideas here. But basically what I would say is you mostly want to put out your personal stuff, because Twitter is all about, as Dave said yesterday, what were the two? There was relationship building and communication. You know, those are the keys to the future, right? So most of them, you want to focus on doing that relationship building. So most of it should be personalized tweets, but I think it's okay to add a few automated things in. You know, and one of the first example that I give is, you know, tweeting out blog posts. And, you know, I think that's cool, just having a blog post and using Twitter feed to push your content out. One of the other things that I've been looking at is there are limitations and there are some cool customized things. So instead of using Twitter feed, like I haven't programmed in like 10 years, but I want to create like a little Twitter client that does the same thing, so I can add more customized things. And then I actually, so you have your personal, this gets back to that channels theory. You have your personalized Twitter, and then maybe you can choose to have one for your blog too. I personally have both. And once again, you would use Twitter feed to kind of feed your blog into your Twitter. Scheduling tweets. Oh, do we have another one? No. Scheduling tweets in the future. The advice here is that you definitely want to use a web-based client, because if you use your desktop and your machine happens to be turned off, no new trolling tweets I haven't seen. All right. But you definitely want to use a web-based client, because if you use your desktop one and it happens to be off, and you kind of missed it. So as I said, you can do, you know, I use Seismic Web for doing scheduled tweets. You can also use Twaiter. They're the service that offers the recurring tweets. And then Hootsuite, you know, if you've gone Hootsuite, then it's a good option there. And then, like I said, you can also write a Python script that does that. Recurring tweets, like I said, this is every marketer's dream, but I wouldn't overdo it. Twaiter, and like I said, there are other clients or other services that you can pay. And some of them are expensive, like $500 a month or something. I'm like, wow, you would pay $500 a month to, you know, get Twitter client or get Twitter content out there. One of the cool things that I've done in the past is I ran a public calendar on Google, and there was a certain set of services that you could stream stuff through so that you can actually push out you can tweet out reminders of events coming up. So that came, as part of the website that I run, we do like a local meetups that are going on, and so that was cool because I would set a reminder for like say 4 hours, and that would go into my Gmail, which would get filtered out and pushed to this like email to Twitter service, and then it would get tweeted out. So that was kind of cool. And then there may be some cool things that you want to do in terms of automation. I mean, one of the examples there is like there's a lot of people that are just getting into InfoSec, and you know, maybe you put out kind of a basic tip of the day. So every day at 5 o'clock, pick a random like say you have 100 different tips, and you pick a random one and then tweet that out. So there's some cool things you can do there. This is mostly the current setup that I use. Since I'm around DC in the Northern Virginia area, I use Yahoo Pipes to pull in blog feeds from everyone that has a blog in Nova, which I call Nova Bloggers. And then the Pipes goes to Twitter feed, which pushes out to Twitter. The calendar reminder I already talked about, and then I use both Twitter feed and Twitter to push out RSS content. Right, so does anybody have any cards? Okay. Mr. Should I, all right. what he was saying right here. So, Mr. Dust M4N. Okay. So he uses Twitter to keep up to date with his network, and he just started using it. So if anybody has cards, bring them up. So, like I said, the future is maybe create some sort of a Twitter bot, or
Go ahead.
one option is you can use this, guys. So it's this replicants.org, and this is the general description. I'm not going to read that, but I think some of the funny words are, people on Twitter maybe, have feelings of shyness or introversion or personal worthlessness. And so the goal of this is to help, like you would go in and do your Twitter stuff, but it would enhance your virtual self. So basically pretty easy to use. I set up an account with this. You can enter relevant site stuff that you may have or that you like, through YouTube, Vimeo, things like that. You can put in a few keywords, pick a couple top followers, like in info sec. Hey, these are the top 5 people that I want to know, or that I like, and I would want to tweet content like them. And it's pretty easy. Then you just do an OAuth authentication to Twitter, and it automatically tweets relevant content. It follows relevant folks. And it actually will go in and try to strike up conversations with people. And it works on Twitter, and then also interfaces with Facebook. So I have a video, but there's sound, and we can't listen to it. So one of the things that I thought you could do is be really evil. Maybe you could set up like multiple replicants, and like they could fight it out. So, or one of the like in another talk that I gave, I talked about raising your cloud score, and so you could set up multiple replicants, and they could talk amongst themselves, and then their cloud scores would build up, because cloud is mainly based on conversations. Measure yourself. All right, strategy number 5: measure yourself. So if you're really into Twitter, you really want to know kind of how good am I doing. There's that old management phrase where you're not managing it unless you can measure it. So a few thoughts out there is, a lot of people just say, hey, the number of followers, that's a good sign for, hey, if I'm getting more followers, I'm a great person, right? But you could go, and there's a lot of very cheap services, like for $5, you can go and sign up, and somebody, cheap labor, offshore labor will go, and they'll set up accounts, and they'll follow you. So and for like $5, you can get like 5,000 followers, and it's like, all right, but my big focus is really, focusing on quality of followers over quantity. And I don't know, can anybody ever think of a way that, how do you measure quality of the people that follow you? Does anybody got any ideas?
I set up groups for different kinds of followers in TweetDeck. So if they're quality, I'll put them in the InfoSec group or local group. And while I may have a lot of followers, I may not pay attention to all of them.
Yeah.
I may follow them back, but that's how I separate the cream of the crop. Basically.
Yeah. So he uses lists kind of, and that's one algorithm that some services may use, is they'll go in and see, well, how many lists is this user on? Of course, that's another thing that you could offshore for relatively cheap. But my focus is to, I think being, a genuine honest person, and I think that's the way to go over the long run. You could get a lot of followers short term, but if you really don't like doing it, and you're just trying to build up this big account, you may have a huge spike, but I think you're also going to have a huge drop too. Cloud Score, I sort of talked about. There's a blog post that they put out, and these were their 3 tips for getting a higher Cloud Score, if that's your thing. So create content worth sharing, and they recommend just putting content out and seeing what gets the most retweets, favorites, things like that. Their big thing is engagement, and there is where I talk about starting the discussions. So ask questions about what other people post. Don't, and if you put out content, don't tweet 50 times and then just drop off. Like if somebody retweets it or whatever, try to get engaged with them. And then the nice thing about this is that's where the network building really comes in. So indirectly, you may be raising your clout, but it's really about getting out there and knowing folks, building networks, and that's where trying to become like a high engaged person on Twitter, I think has a lot of benefits. Some other things is there's like the number of times you're retweeted, the number of times that you're mentioned. That's retweet rank. That's a service that does that. But once again, then you can also do like I use Bitly, right? So I can go in and check what posts got clicked on or which links got clicked on the most. Right. Somebody, so Hittenberg started following me. Hittenberg? Anyone? Alright, cool. Got a new follower. But the big thing here is with all these things, these can all be, like, you can fake it. For $5 a month, you can gain all these. And so, I guess, but if you're interested, I stepped ahead of one slide there, but these are some services that there's Twitter Counter, Tweet Stats. These are a few things, and I have the content that they track there, but they'll do like a whole timeline of retweets by day, week, month, quarter. So you can get a timeline of what you're doing there. Tweet Stats has some cool stuff too. But I mean, like I said, really the goal is creating a good brand or reputation, and that may not having a lot of followers, having a high clout, or having a lot of retweets and mentions, that may not necessarily mean that you have a good brand or a good network. So can anybody think of what is a measure that we could use? And like if you can't use these, does anybody have any ideas?
I always like to say that, even if you're a security rock star, let's say HD Moore, I don't know how many he has, 8,000.
Yeah.
Want to hire people, make it 15.
He's awesome, man.
Yeah, I think 15,000.
Yeah.
Even if you want those guys, security rock star,
Like,
your average low-end porn star probably has 25,000.
Yeah.
It all puts it in perspective.
He's a good.
Not the high end. The
example.
Jenna Jamesons have way more than that. But I'm talking the low end.
James.
The one's just getting in the morning, right?
Well,
The one that hasn't turned 18 yet.
Awkward.
Let's see. So ONSI uses Twitter to keep up with InfoSec community. Yay, thank you for. And all right. So no one can, during that brief break, no one came up with anything like a good. I don't know. So this is the only way that I could figure it out is. I think maybe on a quarterly or annual basis, try to get your followers to do a survey, like what they like, what they don't like. Am I tweeting too much, not enough? I don't know. That's the only option that I could really think of that I think would, and you could have things like ranking 1, 2, 5, but some of the stuff that I would be interested in are the comments that they would write out, you know, what they like, what you do, you don't like, what do you want to hear more of, less of. I don't know, can anyone think of any, you know, real way to measure this?
I think you'll see people drop if you're doing something that.
Well, yeah, but I'm like saying doing this like once a year. I mean, it's not, it isn't.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you're not tweeting stuff that they're interested in, they're not gonna continue to follow you.
Yeah.
In those cases, they're
Oh,
gonna drop.
crap.
Or you could ask them directly, you know, even if you want, you know, how am I doing? It's
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
the old
yeah.
Koch thing, how am I doing?
Yeah.
And if they don't wanna say publicly, they could always DM you.
Mhm.
I feel sad that I was way off, and HD Mo's got like 17,612.
He's a porn star, man.
Yeah.
A budding porn
Oh,
star.
great! Security industry sex tape. So we don't need that. We don't need that shit.
So yeah, but yeah, I mean, and it's basically like Alonte said, is just reaching out, you know, kind of doing, but it's in terms of doing polls, these are some of the polls that I usually use SurveyMonkey. I've personally never done this, but I use SurveyMonkey for getting comments and feedback on the website that I run, but yeah, I mean, I really don't know how to measure it accurately, but it's something to consider. I mean, what you end up doing is you use a bunch of things like, oh, followers, clout, and there's a whole other services, but I feel kind of, you know, those can all be gamed, so I don't know.
So would Twitter be interested, do you think, in doing some sort of a integration with their follow and unfollow button to capture that information when people are coming in to follow you and when they're leaving, as far as like radio buttons to say, you know, content wasn't relevant, guy was rude, you know, whatever it happened to be.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Because when they leave, you don't get.
Right.
generally-
You have no idea why they left and who left.
The APIs may be able to provide you that information, that's a good idea for a third-party service.
Yeah.
I'm sure people would find value in
Of course, Twitter will then create their own and push you.
it. I'm sure, that's how it works.
So yeah, this is good. So unfollow reasons. And Ante said just ask people one-on-one.
Or just differential logging, so you can find out when someone dropped and who dropped, and you know, follow up with them later.
Yeah. Yeah. So like a service that I know you can subscribe to it, like an unfollow.
You could just even, you know, just run a list of who's following you every week, and then run a diff between them and find out
Yep.
who dropped, who's
That's
following.
good. But then it gets back to the question of how do you, like your follower, I don't know, like there's no number that you can put to it. Like, oh, I'm getting better, I'm getting worse. There's no
Well,
way.
If you take it all in a whole, it's
Exactly.
how much interaction am I getting from my followers in the community?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've mentioned a lot that a lot of that stuff can be fake by paying
Yeah.
for followers, but I mean, if this is for your own benefit, then you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, I think you use several, and it's sort of like the Google analytic stats. Like I think it's good for trends, but it's not good for exact numbers. This is just a slide that I like to throw in, just some cool services that I've learned about. So as we all know, like, you know, like at DEF CON, I tweeted some cool stuff. And I'm like, I know I tweeted that, and I try to go back and look. Of course, this was about 6 months, or not 6 months, but two months back. It's like, you know, you go to Twitter search, you can't find it. Google, they've temporarily discontinued their real-time search. Although I never really liked it because it didn't seem to work too well for me. You can also just use the following two queries there to try to search there, but there's nothing guaranteed, so it may not find stuff. One of the things that I found was a service called snapbird.org. And so you can either log in or you can just do it without logging in, but you can go in and you put your name in and then you search for keywords, and it goes back 3,200 tweets. It usually works. But that's a service for going back and researching. Another kind of like searching way / backup is to use some sort of a backup service. So I like a tweet backup. So it'll continually just archives them. Then you can download them in all your tweets in various formats, and then you can search them. Backup My Tweets has like you can actually search them online, but they want you to jump through too many hoops. You know, you have to follow them, you have to sign up for an account, you have to do a survey. Like every time you access it, they make you tweet like Backup My Tweets is awesome or something. So too many loops, too many hoops. So this is sort of the bonus. You know, I only showed 5, but this is the bonus strategies is to get the fuck off Twitter. So, you know, tweeting a lot and having a lot of online communication is just one small part of what you need to do. You need to you need to use that. You need to use Twitter as a tool, and you know you can go to but you really need to get out there. You know, go to events like this, volunteer for things like B-sides or run events for local security groups, or best yet, if you're in an area like I know a lot of folks that are in these little small towns and there's nothing there, you know, so maybe they can start one. So, but it's really about reaching out in multiple ways to help market yourself. These are the strategies, just as quick summary, and I'll just go through the rest of these. Let's see, I already did that one. Conspiracy theory, threat, intel, seeking or stalking Boris. And okay, I guess this person doesn't have a Twitter account. Kite, okay, it's some like German word or something. I don't know. Keister.
Oh, Keister stash.
Okay, I don't know.
Keister stash. Yeah, John, where are you? He's hiding back there.
Does anybody have any other cards or?
For a handle like that, I'd hide too.
So for anybody that, not that it's any big deal, but for anybody that turned in cards, you know, I'll give you a shout out, like a Fall Friday shout out. So, okay, no one wants to still turn in cards. So these are some references. This is me. Obviously, I want to give special thanks to HackerCon for letting me talk.
Yay, HackerCon!
Yay. And that's all, folks. And if people want to ask a few questions, or I can hang out, you can ask me afterwards.